Natalia.
Hi, I'm Claire Farouk.
I'm Vanessa Ramon.
I'm Megan Jones.
And I'm Emma Rayshard, and today we'll be reviewing blog posts from the Carnegie Mellon University blog, weekly news from the real world. So today we're going to start, and our first article is going to be titled SawStop Router Tables and New Saw Options. And it was posted on coptool.com, and the author is Jay Amstutz. So, initially reading the title of this article, I was very excited because I thought this meant that the SawStop flush detecting technology, which saves our fingers every day in our scene shop, would be coming to different tools like routers. But that is not what this article is about. In fact, this article mainly talks about all the different technologies that SawStop will not be investing in, namely routers, circ saws, radial arm saws, chop saws, but, and this is the other half of the article, we can now get SawStop brand table saws with new extensions like large format sliding tables, folding out feed tables, and floating dust collection guards. So that was basically the gist of the article. And I personally was a little bit disappointed because I was hoping that the SawStop technology would come to more tools, especially to create a safer environment. But as I was reading the article, I realized there are some pros and cons to adding the flush detecting technology to different tools, and I figured that was what we could start a discussion with.
I think that, especially, actually, the first time we activated the SawStop was this year, and I was on the crew call where it got activated, and, the fact that someone's hand went over the blade and they only got a cut on their finger as opposed to, losing the finger, that is very valuable. And, I read the article as well, when it was first published for my comments, and I was, so excited, we have these routers, and no, it was just, a table expansion. But, I feel like SawStop is really missing out because there is a market for that, and especially in an educational environment where safety is the most important thing, I think that, they really should be focusing on expanding the brand, because I think they appeal directly to universities or even high schools. They really could make a lot of money there in smaller tools.
Yeah, and I also think as, the crew and scene shop unions become more prevalent and become, larger, even though they're already really large, it seems to me, just from reading stuff, that, they're trying to add more and more things to make the people in their union safer, and so there's going to become a market for these sort of things soon, I think, if it doesn't already exist, and so I feel like it's sort of missing out on something that is going to be a necessity in maybe 10, 15 years by not investing in it right now.
I think it would definitely be worth the investment for them, because I think, like Megan said, just with colleges and high schools investing that, I know we probably would definitely invest in more SawStop stuff, because we have so many freshman crew members that are coming in and working with saws for the very first time, and CMU always likes to prioritize safety. So I think we would definitely splurge on that one. So yeah, I think that would be that's something that would be extremely helpful if we had that on more of our equipment.
I agree. Just in any educational setting for sure. And I think that they agree with that. What's disappointing here is that this article is so misleading. Like you said, you clicked on it to hear about how this new technology is going to be used and how we all think it's relevant. But then there's this article that talks about the other products that it has.
Yeah.
Which is disappointing.
And what I was really looking for out of this article, it's fine if this new technology isn't being in development, but then the question is why. And I feel like the article didn't give any answers as to what was stopping SawStop or really any other company from developing this technology to apply to other tools. And I'm sure there are reasons, whether it's financial or even safety factors, because there is danger in having the SawStop technology, or certain materials where the saw detects it as flesh, and so if you try to run certain materials through a router, maybe that could be a reason. And but this is just me speculating, and I really want to learn more about why it is that this isn't being developed. Why is SawStop as a company stopped at the table saw and not kept going?
It seems weird to me that if you're going to write an article about this, why not be more thorough?
Yeah.
It's hardly what they touched on is enough to write a full article about it. It's 3 facts.
I think that's something important to discuss more broadly as well, because not only this article, but a lot of articles, I know that we have a lot of articles on the news feed, but a lot of articles are misleading to me, I feel, and are just not checking their facts. So maybe that's something that
Yeah.
these writers need
So,
to handle better.
let's see if maybe in the future we will have flush detecting router tables and other kinds of technology, but we'll see.
Cool.
So the next article we're going to talk about was titled "The Tony Awards Reinstate the Sound Design Categories for 2017-2018 season." Yay! We're all in the same classes, but we were about to go into our production audio class when we learned about this. So this is pretty exciting. So this article was published on Lighting and Sound America, and basically the way that they kind of talked about it was there's actually going to be a bit of a change in the voting system, which I thought was pretty interesting. So Sound Design Tony was taken away in 2014, is being brought back for the next season. So unfortunately, shows that like kind of happen between those two periods won't be able to like retroactively get Tonys, or shows from this season won't be able to be nominated. But the way they're going to do it now is that the voting system is going to be changed, so only a small subset of voters will vote in the categories, and they're going to be based on their individual trade, which means that, at least I took away from this article, that they're going to kind of try to move more towards having people who are in the sound design field judge this award, and this is really kind of reassuring, because one of the main reasons that they cut the sound design Tony in the first place was just because they're like, well, we can't judge sound design, we can't see it. And I know I kind of think that, you guys could probably speak more to this, but like if you aren't able to judge a whole category of design because you can't see it, I think you need to get new voters as opposed to like eliminating the design category, because ignoring sound design is ridiculous to me.
Yeah, and I really think that there's like that problem kind of exists throughout the Tony Award system, and I know it's a critique that is brought up consistently with the Tony Awards, that it is more about the commercialization of the show and its visual pizzazz than the validity of the design and validity of the choices made when judging it. And I know a lot of people in the theater world who say that we should be looking to other award systems to kind of determine what our standard for theater is. But the Tony Awards are so well publicized that that's the award that the average person, the non-theater goer, will look to determine what shows they judge as best. So I think it's good that we're revising the Tony Awards to move towards a more artistically fair and representative kind of award system.
Yeah. I think that that's a big deal. Like, even in design, in sound design, but in all design aspects of the Tony Awards, I think a lot of times, like, and even as a kid, like, you kind of skip over the, like, lighting design ones and stuff because you want to see, like, the actors and stuff. And I think that there has to be, like, a collective effort to try and change that, because you don't appreciate the actors if they're standing in no light, or if they don't look good or sound good. And so I think that not only changing the people who vote, but reinstating more of these design awards that aren't equally as important as the performance awards will start to give a little more validation to the people in our side of the field.
I agree with you for sure. And as Megan mentioned before, we are all in a production audio class, which is honestly the first sound class that I had ever taken.
Yeah.
And just like learning all that goes into this design, I can see how it would be hard to judge, but I can also see how it's such an art form. And like just there's so much detail in this design. Like there isn't everything, but it's very much collaborative, not only in its art form, but also in its like just how the systems are designed themselves. Every little thing needs to be paid attention to. And I've just grown so much respect for the sound industry, and I'm glad that, like Sarah was saying, that the Tony Awards are paying attention to, and hopefully that will show in other design aspects as well.
And I think part of what makes sound so difficult to judge is that a lot of the work put into sound design is making everything sound normal and natural.
Yeah.
So most of the time when sound design is done well, you don't notice it at all. Because like we're learning in our production audio class, like speaker placement and like adding delays to make everything sound like it's natural, like it's really happening. So I think that like that happens with lighting too. People don't notice lighting because it looks how it's supposed to most of the time, unless it's like a big flashy musical number with like purple lights and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I think that's like part of the reason why probably why the sound design Tony was eliminated is just because people thought they couldn't judge it because they don't notice it, but in reality, like that's part of what makes it very good is when you don't notice it.
And it does speak volumes to kind of the fact that the people who run the Tonys are listening to the people in the field. Because when they cut that Tony, there was like outcry from a lot of people. And it did take a few years, but they did reinstate it. And so I think it makes me also very confident that they are listening to us.
Yeah. Hashtag Tony, can you hear me? Surprise, he can.
Alrighty. So, yay for the sound design. But for now, we're going to talk about another issue that has been brought up in theater. So, a local theater company is presenting a play called The Most Fabulous Story Ever Told, which is by the Outfront Theater Company, and it's basically a retelling of Adam and Eve, but with a gay couple as Adam and Steve. And it's been targeted by a religious organization called America Needs Fatima, sorry. And there have been some really nasty comments to the people involved, saying things like, "What happened? Your father never beat you with a belt, a little sissy," wrote one person, and another person wrote, "To choose this week to show you're a flamboyant, gay, lesbian, and all other bull beep freak stuff for a play is just absolutely unacceptable, and I hope you all burn in hell." But Paul Conroy, who it helped create the story, says that it really is about the faith and the love and the stories that the Bible teaches everyone and what's important, and it doesn't matter how you identify, he said. And he is the founder of the West Atlanta Theater Company. He was putting this on. So this is just a big issue that's come up, also how people choose to do art and how that mixes with people's beliefs. And so I thought we could talk about that and what you guys think about that.
Yeah, so I think, there have been so many, in the history of musical theater and theater in general, there have been so many shows that kind of either relate to religion in some way or poke fun at religion or have something controversial in them. Like, even Jesus Christ Superstar had a lot of backlash when it first came out because people thought they were, I don't know, insulting Jesus in some way.
A lot of it had to do with, also having a person representing Jesus on stage.
Yeah, and also,
some people are against that.
Yeah, so kind of anything that has any kind of religious aspect to it is going to have some kind of backlash. This, I think anyone could look at it and think, this is going to cause controversy, because especially changing any kind of biblical story, especially one as iconic as, the creation story, into adding something like homosexuality, which, we all know the church is not a huge fan of. So mixing those two things together, I think anyone could look at this and say, okay, this is probably going to ruffle some feathers. But
what struck me the most about this was that the complaints that people were giving, and I read through a lot of, the different comments and the complaint letters, it seems like this show isn't actually poking fun at Christianity. It's legitimately trying to be an inspiration for LGBTQ plus people who are religious, and that's still being considered blasphemous, which I think is really interesting, and it shows a lot about, the people who are considering this blasphemous, because it's not as though the show is, making fun of the religion. It's just trying to broaden the religion to reach people who, see themselves as faithful but cannot see themselves in their stories of faith. And I personally, I don't think that that's blasphemous. I think that that's inclusive. And I think there needs to be a difference drawn there. And I think that the people who are protesting this need to determine where they fall on that issue, because if there is, the show is actually making fun of this religion in a way that is, really patronizing or something, then that needs to be brought to attention. But thus far, the only complaint that I've seen about it is its inclusion of homosexuality.
I think that's beautifully said, Emma, because if you do, just even the comments that I read just now are very harsh and have very shallow in their arguments. And I know that the article mentioned that this group, the what's their name again?
The West Atlanta.
Yeah, no, the people.
Oh, the America Needs Fatima.
Yeah, America Needs Fatima people posted just saying they changed the story. They're calling Our Lady a lesbian. Here's a link to go complain. And so I feel like these people aren't all very educated on what this play is about, and it's really just the shallow fact that that it uses homosexuality in the story.
Well, it seems like they don't really care about finding out exactly what it's about. Like,
Right.
It's definitely, I think a lot of this is just a hatred of, or intolerance of LGBTQ plus people hidden behind, like, the pride of religion, which is not an uncommon thing. And I just think that this, like, is another example.
Yeah, well, one thing I do find interesting about this is that, like, theater is so, like, I think our community is so accepting, like, just, like, the theater community, and to, like, have this reaction to something that, like, that a lot of us, like, have in our lives, like, homosexuality and things like that, is surprising to me. It was surprising
it's not, like,
to me to
people
find.
It's not people in the community.
Right, but
I also think, theaters know it's not new to theater to have people be like, hey, stop speaking out about this thing that we don't accept. And so I think that as much as they're getting all this backlash, I think you're getting backlash for, including more people, then you're doing something right. So,
Gotcha.
All right, so we're going to move on to our next article, which is on lifehack.org, and it's written by Allie Hill, and it is entitled, How to Nail Your Dream Job with an Impressive Resume. So this lovely little article has 10 tips for people making a resume in order to nail your dream job. So, I know. Time to apply to Hamilton, guys. So I'm just going to read the tips really quick so that we all know what we're working with. So number 1, make your resume interactive. So that means like adding links to stuff. 2, take advantage of formatting tools to help important content stand out. All right, nice. Learn how to utilize your real estate effectively. So don't like put unnecessary stuff. Don't leave a lot of empty space for no reason. Whatever. Empower a keyword strategy. So use those buzzwords so that you make it through the filters. Okay. Don't overdo it on design work. True. So don't make it like bright pink. Don't print it out on like neon paper. Your skills and job expertise should reflect how you can do the job you were applying for, not how you did your previous job. Very true. That's like in one of our classes, it's stressed. Never say, back in high school, I did this, because that doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what you're doing now. Include the same language of the job posting into your resume. Again, that'll help. Like if you're doing any kind of online engine, it's gonna like search for certain words. Put your strongest qualities at the top. True, because no one's going to read all the way to the bottom. Be specific in listing your achievements. Cool. Only talk about skills that pertain to the job. Awesome. So when I read this, I was excited because I, always want to nail my dream job. But I found that like a lot of these tips were kind of like, duh.
Yeah.
Like for example, take advantage of formatting tools. Like you mean making text bigger?
Or making it in color.
That's an interesting thought. Wow, I'd never heard that before. So the tips are all very helpful, but I think they're only helpful for someone who has literally no experience in making a resume. And I don't think this is something that someone looking to make their resume for the first time would click on. I think this is something that like we would click on because we're like, oh, something to improve our already pretty good resume. So
I think that it also like, at least when I read that article, I kind of felt like, okay, but this doesn't seem to apply super well to like a theatrical resume. I feel like I have 2 very separate resumes for like theatrical job and non-theatrical job. But so I think as much as this didn't help, it's always good to get like tips on your resume. Like we had last year a whole like day where we pretended to apply for a fake job. We had our like resumes reviewed, and like that was really helpful for me. I think that like if you're looking for help on a resume, rather than like looking up a top 10 list, it's probably better to just go to like somebody who has been successful and be like, can I see your resume? What do you think of my resume? And I think that like peer evaluation of it, because also there really is there's definitely a lot of wrong ways to make a resume, but there's not like a perfect way to do it. So I think that you kind of have to customize it to what you want.
Yeah, this seemed more like a resume for dummies kind of article.
Yeah.
It did seem like, I think we've all like looked at our resumes so many times, like I know it like the back of my hand, and like I was like, oh, I am using bold, like duh, So I think it was definitely like, yeah, these are good things, and she's not wrong about any of them, but I also don't think they're, like, things that my mind wasn't blown, you know?
I wouldn't call them killer tips.
I think, like, especially in the industry that we're in as well, it's so, and it's so, like, specific to, like, Megan said that, like, a lot of these would be, like, good tips for people who have never done a resume, but it's going to be a general resume, whereas, like, we would have to, like, do more tweaking of it and, like, make it more personalized to, like, our industry, which, we've already gotten lessons on how to do, so, like, yeah, this article was definitely,
And I also think that, like, that's doing these tips is not going to nail you your dream job. Like, this is just the standard for having a resume.
Yeah.
You know, like, a lot of these, like, don't leave a whole page, half a page blank, you know. That's not going to get you your dream job. That's just how your resume should be for any job, you know. Yeah. I feel like none of these tips make your resume stand out in particular, and partially because the tips are just way too general. Like, use design formatting. That doesn't help me. How should I use design formatting? Is there a particular layout? Do people read the paper in a certain way? You know, where should the information be? Where should your name be? How big should your name be compared to other? I feel like there was more specific tips that could really push your resume to a good point, and this article just didn't hit on that.
Yeah.
So.
I think this was a good article. It should just have a different title.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, next up is turning the NFL draft into grand theater with Philadelphia as the stage. It's on Philly.com, and it was written by Zach Berman. So basically, the gist of this article kind of goes through the NFL draft, which was last week, and the kind of technical theater, if you will, aspects of the NFL draft that I think many people don't realize are directly related. They talk a lot about how they didn't want to do it in kind of a standard arena because that's pretty typical, but they didn't want to do it in, like, you know, the ballroom of a hotel because that's also, like, pretty typical. And so they ended up kind of building this stage, almost like you would for, like, a music festival, to do the NFL draft. And kind of how it was a little more reinventive than the drafts have been in, you know, previous years. I think what I took away from this mostly was just that the man, Zach Berman, writing this article was kind of stressing the point that, like, there are so many theatrical elements involved in doing any sort of live anything. Anything that you see on TV, any events, live TV, other stuff like that. It's interesting kind of how much people don't realize what we do goes into that, like, political conventions and other stuff like that. Like, it's all live theater for the most part in its skeleton. So I think that was really interesting, and I think especially people who watch sporting events don't really ever think about the correlation between theater and sporting events, even though really theater and sporting events are the two largest kind of areas of live events I can think of in the world. So it's interesting.
Yeah. That's something I like when I was explaining to my parents what I was going to do with my life. I was like, my dad was very concerned about job availability because he was like, oh, well, so you'll just be doing, like, musicals? And I was like, no, actually, anything that has, like, an audience or any kind of live event, like, including televised live events, that has a stage manager, at least one. Yeah. And I remember, like, we went to, like, a concert the next day. He was like, so does this have a stage manager? And I was like, yep, you bet it does. So I do think it's interesting. Like, we've read a lot of articles on this blog about, like, churches with lighting designers and, like, stuff like that. And it's really interesting to see, like, kind of how many things in the world that you do not really think about having theatrical production behind it do have, like, design teams and stuff.
And I also think part of that is that we do our job well when we're invisible. Yeah. So I think that is part of it. Like, it's no problem that these people don't really know what we do because the whole point of our job is to make sure that we're not seen, you know?
I love, like, there have been a lot of articles being, like, this person discovering how much work goes into every little thing, and I love those because it is magic. Like, we are there to be invisible, to make things happen magically, and it is really cool how, like, these, like, the NFL is, like, these, you know, the sport industry is figuring that out, And I just read an article where this scientist visited the set of Aliens, and he was really impressed by just the amount of detail that went into painting the props. And as Claire was mentioning, a lot of people ask me oh, what do you want to do when you get out of college? And I'm I don't know. I could do anything from TV to cruises or theater, and it's crazy how our industry does reach so far, and it's really cool to see how people are starting to recognize that.
Yeah, and I think one thing that this article, a larger issue that this article touches on, is that people like to think that art is one industry, and that art is one thing, and that the rest of the world kind of happens outside of art and outside of this arts management world, but it's absolutely not true. When I was explaining to my friends what I choose to do with my life, and they were but yeah, you're going to be limited to art, and I was you don't understand, artists are everywhere. Everything that you do and everything that you touch is thought about by a designer and an artist, and then there's somebody who has to technically produce it, and then there's people who distribute it,
and who execute it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's everything is touched by art. So you can sit in your bubble and think that, oh, art is this thing, and I am doing this thing, but you're not. So, and I think the more that people are educated about how important art is in the society that we function in, the better. Because I think people really don't understand that, by defunding arts programs in schools and things like that, you're eliminating so much of what goes into our everyday life.
Yeah, and the creativity of other markets as well.
Exactly.
I think art is about more than, just creating art. It's about planting a creative seed, and then somebody who becomes a scientist, but they still have that, creative part of their brain that they learned in their 5th grade art class, that they use to help them solve problems.
Right. Yeah. So I just think it's really funny that these, a big tough football player from my hometown who thought that theater was stupid and of course it should get cut. No, because we're the ones running your draft. So yeah.
All right.
It's all relative.
On to some Softwood.
Great. Yes. Okay. So we're gonna move on to our next article, which is titled "Analysis: New Canadian Softwood Tariffs May Have Limited Impact." This title is a bit of a mouthful, and there's a lot of issues going on here, because apparently Canadian softwood imports are a huge deal in America. So I'm just going to touch on the broader issue, and then I'll focus in on the article. So first things first, American softwood producing industries are terrible, apparently. And we do not produce enough softwood in America to fund our own housing and softwood needs. So we import a lot of our softwood, which is also cheaper, from Canada. However, in the past year, they've instated a 20% countervailing duty or tax on importing certain goods, including softwood from Canada. So what this means is that a Canadian person and a Canadian company cuts their lumber. Then an American company buys the lumber from Canada, but in addition to buying the lumber from Canada and paying the Canadians who they bought it from, they also have to pay the U.S. government a 20% tax just for importing the goods. Then these builders will then get hired for a project and build using this wood, and then the people who hire them for the project will pay them. So what this really means is that the costs are going to kind of trickle down into everyday people. And there's not just one tariff that's going into effect, there's kind of several layers of tariffs, but the article stated that at the end of the year, it'll be approximately a 30% tariff on all soft lumber imported from Canada. But luckily, the other portion of this article was that we're not going to see an immediate effect because American traders have been incorporating these costs in to their cost of running a business for months already. So they've already slowly begun to increase their cost to cover the future tariffs, which are going to be coming into effect very soon. So we're not going to see an immediate boost in the cost of, say, buying wood or having to produce or having the immediate cost of building a house, but we are going to see a slow and steady increase. And basically, the American companies are not happy about this at all because it is going to result in them having to pay more for lumber, which means cutting the equivalent of 8,000 jobs a year, which is the cost equivalent. So this article basically details this whole this whole arrangement that has gone on and how it could possibly affect mostly the home building is where this article came out of, the home building industry. And it says that on average, a board that now costs $370 per 1,000 board foot in 1 year will increase to $430 per 1,000 board feet. And it takes 15,000 board feet to build the average house. So some of the questions that immediately I had after reading the article were, what is the government's place in placing these tariffs? What was their motivation for it? What is the best way to distribute the cost of this tariff? And will this actually affect the theater industry?
I mean, I think it could potentially affect the theater industry just because, I mean, at least here, like, we throw out so much wood. We really don't reuse enough stuff. So if we're constantly buying more and more wood, then I think it could directly affect us. Though I don't think it'll be to the same scale as the home industry, just because, like, we're obviously not building full houses. So we're building sometimes things that are bigger, sometimes things that are smaller, so it'll probably balance out. I mean, in terms of, like, why this is happening, I mean, it's the whole idea of, like, you know, make American, buy American, that whole thing. Like, they don't want the people importing foreign goods. Like, that's the reason they're doing this. But instead of not motivating people to import, all they're going to do is just increase the cost, basically to the consumer in the end. Which is kind of going to be problematic, especially if we want to try to promote building more houses and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if it'll affect theater as much as the home industry, but I think it might have, like, at least a slight impact.
It may also, like, if this happens and, like, it does affect the theater industry more, I think maybe in a way it'll be a good thing, because maybe we'll be more conscious about how we use our wood, and if we just throw out, like, a lot of scrap every single day without even, like, using it, like, trying to use it for something else. Because, like, I know we go through so much wood on every single production, not to mention, like, all the smaller things, like TV projects, like arcades, stuff like that. We go through so much wood in, like, a single month. So I think this may, I mean, in a way it's a good thing, because maybe it'll force people to look at more eco-friendly options / using their resources more effectively.
Yeah, and it's also just something to think about, like, the entire theatrical industry and what we build out of wood is drops in the bucket of the housing industry, so I really don't know how much this will affect us. I also know, like, I think we here at CMU use a local lumber provider.
Yeah, we do.
I don't think we even import. I think, like, if the prices at Home Depot go up, it's going to affect us a little bit, but I know we're also actively trying just not to buy from places like Home Depot anyway. So I don't know how much, and I think other theater companies run in a very similar fashion where they prefer local resources, just because the scale we're getting is not enough to go to a big name provider, but we also need more materials than the average home center like Home Depot can provide. So I feel like theater sits in this weird medium where we don't actually import a lot of our lumber, but I could be wrong.
So we're going to move on to our next article, and this is called NEA Study Explains Financial Effect of the Arts Nationally and California's Huge Cultural Economy. So basically, this was, as we kind of all know, the NEA is in danger of losing funding. So this article kind of was about a study that the NEA performed, and then specifically focused on in California as a subset of that. So one of the first, they kind of gave out a lot of numbers, so I'll read those off. So $730 billion of the U.S. economy in 2014 was made up, like, was contributed to by the, like, arts industry. So, like, kind of comparing that, the NEA's annual budget is only $148 million. So that's, like, a really significant difference. And basically their kind of argument was that the arts make so much money for the U.S. and they won't give the money to the NEA is kind of insulting, and that it's kind of, like, it's not justified because they do contribute so much. And then specifically talking about California, this study was called the Arts and Cultural Production Satellite Cap Report. So California is one of the top 5 ranking states in the area of arts and cultural employment. It's the top ranking state for motion picture and video production, which is not a shocker because LA is there. It's also the top ranking state for compensation in film and video production, the second for musical instrument manufacturing, pretty interesting, second behind Tennessee, and then the third for employment in the area of sound recording, and fourth for compensation in performing arts companies. And the arts also created a trade surplus of $24.1 billion in 2014. So kind of like the general takeaway from this article, at least from my perspective, is that the NEA is going to, their funding is going to go to organizations that need help, not the ones that are contributing this much. So the fact that the arts is giving back this much money to the American economy and the government will not provide for the arts organizations that need help is really sad. But I think that, at least maybe, it also kind of, I thought was interesting, could provide an opportunity for more funding for organizations that did depend on the NEA. If they are contributing this much money to the economy, these huge organizations, maybe they could help them out. But yeah, just a thought.
I also think it's just really interesting, the American national identity and what American industries are. And we moved from, in the Industrial Revolution being a very industrial national identity to now I feel like Americans are known as entertainers. If there is one industry that is still kind of being dominated by, the American subset of that industry, it is entertainment and it is the arts. And I feel like we are one of the largest producers worldwide, and certainly the most well-known producer worldwide of arts. And the fact that this study just goes to prove that in a way. We're making so much money off of our arts and entertainment industry, and the fact that the government is kind of ignoring it is really, really sad, because it is one of the industries that we as a country are the most well known for and are the most successful in, truthfully. So I think this just goes to highlight the importance of arts funding in our government.
I think part of it is people think people hear arts and they just think visual art. They don't really think of all the things that art encompasses. That's television, movies,
every
music,
single movie you
literally
see.
every song you hear on the radio. Everything is art. And I think a lot of people don't think of that, because I know I personally used to not think that way. I would think art, and I would think just visual art, like paintings. And then I had my eyes opened to the fact that art is an umbrella that I hate it. It's an umbrella that covers a great many things. So yeah. Okay, cool.
Awesome. So our next article we will be talking about is called Why Decolonization Means the Possible End of Shakespeare in South Africa Schools. And it was posted on the Theatre Times and by Natasha Joseph and Chris Thurman. And what this article basically says is that South Africa is decolonizing. They're focusing on decolonization in their schools and things, so that might spell the end for William Shakespeare in their classrooms. And so how this article was formatted was these two authors kind of asked each other questions, and they so I wanted to ask you guys some questions and kind of say what they answered as well. So it says, do you think there's room for both Shakespeare and African authors in these schools, and is Shakespeare actually relevant for the pupils in South Africa today? And Natasha stated that there's limited room because to accommodate these mass texts such as Shakespeare that are also very advanced, it takes longer for them to learn them. So what do you guys think?
I mean, I think that personally, as a controversial opinion, I think Shakespeare is overdone and is getting a little bit irrelevant to us too. So
I'll agree.
And
I'm with it. Who cares?
Yeah, and I think that I think it's great that I don't think they should eliminate it entirely, because I think if they're going to study theater, Shakespeare is still a huge part of theater. Shakespeare's everywhere. But taking part of that out and maybe we're not going to read Macbeth this year. Maybe we're going to read a play from our country.
Yeah.
I think that's much more valuable to them. And
Also,
it should be more valuable.
Here, I think the general argument on decolonization in their schools is something that isn't is interesting, but also here we do, even in my high school, we try to learn different authors from different communities and different countries too. So I think there's advantages definitely to learning your own heritage and history and things, but there's also advantages to having a wide range of knowledge of different authors, and by maybe there won't be any Shakespeare, but they shouldn't eliminate it in general.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not anti-Shakespeare. I haven't read a ton of Shakespeare. I mean, I've probably honestly read the least amount of Shakespeare of the people sitting at this table. I appreciate Shakespeare, and I think it's important to understand Shakespeare. I mean, he he shaped the English language. Like, that's not a small thing. But I also think that, you know, it's easy for us to appreciate Shakespeare because he is kind of reminiscent of our own culture. And I think that he's not reminiscent of that culture as much. So I think it's important for us to read him maybe more than where you're talking about. While it's still important to understand that, like, it's important to understand all different types of art, I think it's not as relevant maybe there as something that's a little closer to, you know, what they can relate to.
I also think you have to think about, like, what the students are going to go out and read on their own time or be forced to read later on in life. Like, if you go through your high school experience without reading Shakespeare and then you go to college, you know, like, then you're probably going to have to read Shakespeare there. And if you haven't at that point, people are going to be talking about it enough that you're going to want to go out and read it on your own. So I feel like there's no need to kind of include, like, we have these really giant grand works that we consider, like, the hallmark or the staples of literature. And they're talked about so often that if you didn't include them in school's curriculum, people would probably go and read them anyway, just so that they would know what the heck everyone is talking about.
Yeah. Or people would stop talking about them. You know? Like,
and I think that's also okay. I feel like our society can move beyond the six straight white men that we continually go back to as, you know, the fathers of American literature.
We've been reading Shakespeare for 400 years. Like, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if we started reading other people, you know?
That's, like, and even if they did read, like, other, like, just, like, maybe one or two, like, other, like, authors from different countries, like, just the fact that they're, like, they're trying to stick with their own, like, authors is great. But, like, also, like, it's good to have a wide range of knowledge. Like, even, like, to read To Kill a Mockingbird would be, like, great, you know?
I don't think you can eliminate Shakespeare completely and have a legit class about theater. I think it shaped theater, and that's not something that you can ignore because it's important. But I also think that theater is always being shaped more. And so you learn about that, and then you move on and you learn about somebody who wasn't straight and a male and white and how that is changing theater now.
You know, also the whole point of, like, decolonizing these South African schools is that, you know, they're trying to get rid of an oppressive race-based system that has been so systematically ingrained that, like, you know what, if you need to cut out all of the white authors from your school system for a year in order to teach these children that like, racism isn't okay and that the whole world isn't based around white people, like, I feel like that's fine. Do that. Go for it.
Definitely.
Like, if the cost of ending or trying to end systematic oppression is a few dead white guys' hurt feelings, do it.
Honestly, I think Shakespeare's gotten enough fame and fortune from his plays, so I don't think he's gonna his dead soul is gonna super care about this little thing. So, you know. And
the value that Shakespeare has is value that we as a society place on him. So if we decide that he's no longer as important to the world of theater, then he isn't, and that's fine. You know, that can happen, and that's okay, and nobody will suffer for it. I promise.
Alrighty. Alright, time for the next article. So, our next article is Blurred Lines Appeal. Brief says artists can't copyright a groove. And this was posted on The Hollywood Reporter, and it was written by Ashley Collins. So basically this article is about musicians and songwriters behind Marvin Gaye's Gotta Give It Up are suing Pharrell Williams and Robin Thicke for blurred lines because they think these songs are too similar and that there's, like, the vibe of both songs is too similar, so therefore they think that since their song's copyrighted, therefore Robin Thicke and Pharrell Williams are breaking the law. So it's interesting reading the comments for this article because almost all of them are prefaced with, while I think that Robin Thicke and his music are trash. This is how I feel. Well, there was garbage and trash.
I think trash. I think garbage,
Every synonym for the word garbage was probably thrown around. So there's no disagreeing that we all are not huge fans of Mr. Thicke's work. But
songs about rape.
Yeah, songs about date rape and whatnot. But pretty much everyone agrees with this first statement on this article that's bolded and made big. A groove or feeling cannot be copyrighted, and inspiration is not copying. So I would definitely agree with that because they were found to not be they were not found to be guilty of stealing the music because when they brought it to court, they were not allowed to play the original sound recording of the song. They just were looking at the sheet music to look for similarities or things that are stolen, and that is you can't put the groove in the sheet music. So they found that they were not similar enough to have a huge problem, and that was why the people behind Marvin Gaye's music were very angry because they feel that while it's not the sheet music that's the same, it's the vibe of the song, which is kind of stupid because
you can't copyright a vibe.
You can't copyright a vibe.
Although there is an argument to be made that the sheet music is not representative of all of the technical elements.
Oh
of
no,
music.
yeah.
I feel like you have to look. I mean, I'm not sure in this case that any of it was actually copyright infringement, but I feel like just basing it off of sheet music or instrumentation is a little bit limiting to the art of music because there's a lot of things that go into editing and recording that could be copied.
Mm-hmm.
And if the sound that is produced is the same, then is that considered? If the sounds are not necessarily note for note, but if you look at the waveform of the sound and it is all identical, where does the line get drawn in terms of?
Sounds pretty blurred.
I think that this kind of goes back to the core of how all art, if you can make an argument. If you make an argument for this is copyright, then you can make an argument that all art is in a way in a way violating copyright because art is from inspiration, and inspiration can be from other art, and everything around us could be art. So it's how do you judge
that's kind
that?
of a slippery slope if you start copywriting music because I mean if you look at first of all sampling is a thing even Beyonce on Lemonade sampled stuff from the Wu-Tang Clan it's you take parts of other people's songs put in your song. Obviously it's different than the same feel of a song overall, but I just if you start by saying you can't have the same vibe in a song as somebody. Well, there's a finite number of vibes.
I know, there's
there's media keys on a piano. Those aren't getting bigger, people have been making music since people existed. So, how much can we prevent from, creating the same vibe,
Vsauce has a very interesting, I don't know if anyone follows Vsauce on YouTube, but they have a very interesting video on that where they prove that there is an infinite amount of music mathematically, because there is. Fun fact. But I feel like the article isn't exactly talking about, is copywriting a vibe okay? I feel like the Blurred Lines conglomeration has said, all we did was take inspiration. All we did was get a vibe from this. And then the people from Marvin Gaye's music video said, you took more than just a vibe. You deliberately copied it. I don't think anybody disagrees that you can or cannot copyright a vibe. I think the issue lies in what is considered a vibe. Where does vibe end, and deliberately copying, recording, editing, and musical processes begin. And that's kind of where they're talking about. Is it actually that they just took a vibe, or did they take something more? Yeah.
All right, cool. So last but not least, this article is on productionhub.com, and it's called Women to Watch, Highlighting Powerful Women in the Production Industry. So we wanted to finish with this one, because we're all powerful women in the production industry. So this article basically follows, I think, 5 or 6 women who work kind of all throughout the field of technical theater and production. And it basically is they ask them all kind of a very similar grouping of questions, kind of how'd you get your start, what do you like your job, what's your role, but I think the thing that I took away most from it is they ask all of them, what advice would you give, your younger self or give to younger women in your job, and I think after reading kind of all of those, I think the biggest thing I took away was, buckle down, because, it's tough, and I feel like I read the word, boys club more times in this article than I was expecting. Even though, I know that is what it is, every single one of them was well, it's sort of a boys club, blah, 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 blah. And I think that is, discouraging, but also makes me at least excited to kind of break into that and tear it to shreds a little bit.
Yeah, a little.
You know? So I think that there's a giant gender gap in our industry that a lot of people don't think about or realize that there is. Recently this kind of statistic came out on Facebook of like the women and men. I don't know if you guys saw that. The women and men in different like tech theater industries, and like it's alarming how many fewer women there are who work in this industry than men. So I think that these women are awesome, and I always love listening or reading about women who are older than me who have kind of done what I'm about to do. And I've had 20 more years or 30 more years of progress than they've had. So I think that, it's important to recognize these women, and I'm happy that articles are being written about them and stuff. It's okay. So it's good. Why? So it's really good. I think that it's great, and I think that it makes me excited to buckle down and kind of kick down that door.
Yeah, I mean, I think, even just getting a taste of what the industry is like here at CMU, I'm both nervous and excited because, there are problems here at CMU with, gender discrimination, and both in, like, a systematic way and also just in a, like, interpersonal way. But I know for sure that we don't have it as bad as it will be out there. Totally. So I feel like we're just getting a taste of it now, and I feel like I feel like I'm finally starting to get a handle on how I need to act and react in order to maintain professional working relationships while still calling people out on their sexist BS. So
I also think something that I've struggled with a lot is like it's really easy to kind of mold yourself to be invisible in the boys club instead of changing the club. I remember like last year, or I don't know if it was last semester, like somebody kind of made a joke in the scene shop, and a friend of ours said you could take that sexist BS and like take it somewhere else. And at first I was like, oh my god, why did she say that? Like that's totally inappropriate. And then I was like, but she's so right, you know, like you have like that has no place here, and like it's important to say like, yes, I'm a woman in this field and I'm not going to stand for your crap. Not, yes, I'm a woman in this field and I'm going to make myself invisible so that I can get through, you know? Because that doesn't change anything for the people who come after us, you know?
One thing that this article did help me realize is that here, like, and just like, it helped me appreciate, like, the women in my life who have done this for us, like, who have come before us, and who are awesome at what they do, and, like, kick butt at what they do, and don't take anything from anyone, and that is, like, such an inspiration, and it's cool to see, like, these articles popping up, because I feel like there's been a lot more, just, like, in the past month, about, like, women artists, and, like, now women in the production, and they're, like, long lists now, and it's, like, really cool to see, like, just, like, how we're still in the time where these women are, like, still fighting, and that we can just continue this fight, that we're, like, at that place where we can definitely just, like, ride up. Right up.
And I think it's, I like, look at these articles, and I'm like, wow, like, this, like, these women are so cool. Like, I hope that one day little girls will be looking at, us and thinking like, wow, look at what shit they had to go through, and we're gonna make it so much better.
And hopefully it's all the more better for them. Like I think that's what made me kind of excited about this article, because I was like, if these women can kind of push through and make it so much better for me in the circumstances that they have, there's no reason that I can't do that for girls 30 years from now. So it made me kind of a little scared, but really excited also to start the work.
Nice.
All right, cool. And on that note,
thank you for
peace
watching.
out.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Go stop that video featuring John Lynn.